Okay, welcome back, kiddos. Now we are starting Unit 10. So we're going to talk about circles. Okay, so that's the shape we're going to be talking about for the next couple of weeks. So let's get right into it. Now, one thing is I want to make sure that we're using our Desmos calculator with this. So go ahead and open up your Desmos, and so that way you can practice with me as far as typing stuff in. Okay, so let's talk about our first part. All right, so let me get this calculator out of the way. All right, let's start with our essential vocabulary. Okay, so uh, I'd like you to pause this and see if you know the basic definition of circle, circumference, radius, and diameters, if you had to describe it to somebody. So maybe write it with a whiteboard marker on your desk for just a moment. All right, well, hopefully you tried that. Let's go through these. All right, so first off is a circle. What is a circle? Okay, so a circle is, the definition is where all points are the same distance from the center. Okay, all points are the same distance from the center. So if we see this, is our center point right over here? Okay, so that's our central point. Um, these points are all the same distance from that central point. And that distance is called the radius. So I'm going to highlight this with a different color. The radius is right there. So the radius is the distance from the center to the circle. Okay, so a circle is where all points are the same distance from the center, and then the radius is that distance that's from the center. Okay, so if that's the radius, the diameter is what? The diameter is twice the length of the radius. So in other words, the diameter goes straight across the circle. It goes straight across the circle through the center. It has to go through the center. All right, so you imagine if there was a line that went right through there, that would be the diameter. Okay, so the radius is what we're going to talk about, which is half the diameter. The diameter has to go through that center of the circle. I'm just going to draw a line here, separate those. All right, so then what's the circumference? The radius is that. The circumference, how would you describe that? The circumference is the distance around a circle. Around a circle. Okay, so the circle itself is where all the points are the same distance from that center. Circumference is the distance around there. The radius is the distance from the center point to the circle, and diameter goes all the way across. All right, so keeping that in mind, let's get right into some practice. All right, so we're going to start with what's called the standard equation of a circle. Okay, so if we type in a certain equation and we substitute in place, if we type this in, okay, instead of h, we put the x value of the center, right? And we know that's it's always x comma y, right? So that's the x value, okay? And then the k would be the y value of the center, okay? And then instead of r, we put the length of the radius, okay? So length of the radius. So we're just going to substitute those in, okay? So if we had the equation, it would give us this graph if we typed it into our Desmos. All right, so let's go ahead and write the standard equation of this circle. All right, so here's how we're going to do it. All right, so we need to find out what the center is, right? So we can substitute it in there, and then the radius. So let's start with the center. Okay, so to solve for the center, you can do it a couple different ways. You can start by kind of seeing where you think the center is, or you can use what's called the midpoint formula. All right, so we talked about the midpoint where we find the middle. So let's go ahead and think. I think the center is right over there, right? And I think that kind of makes sense to you. The center should be right over there. Now, here's how I would check it. it has to be the same distance, right? So let me go and check these. So I can go like, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then this one is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's correct. Let's check it this way, right? Up and down. Okay, so let me put that in different colors. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is correct. So if this is the center, that means our center is, if it's going to be x comma y, the x value, right, which goes this way, is 2, right? The y value, right, which goes this way, happens to also be 2, right? So the x value is 2, the y value is 2 as well. All right, so that's the first part that we need. We need to know the x value and the y value. Now we need to know the radius and then squared. So the radius, we said, was from the center out to the circle. So how many units was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So we're going to say the radius is 4. Okay, so now that we have those that information, so the first step we need to do is find the center. Step 2 is find the radius, and then step 3 is to write the equation. Okay, so now that we have that, here's the basics of it. So let's copy everything down except for that where we're going to highlight, where we're going to substitute. So we're going to just say x minus closed and squared plus y minus a value, close it and squared, equals, and I'm just going to do it like this. That way we always have everything in parentheses where we're going to substitute. So then we're going to put the radius. So the h value, which is the x value of the center, right? We said the center is, the x value is the first one, right? So we're just going to put 2 there. I'm going to actually change the color. We're going to put 2 there, right? And on this one, the y value minus the y value of the center, which is 2, right? Then the radius squared. So the radius is 4. Okay? Now, step number 4, the last step is to simplify. Okay, so if we did that, we would take that over here. This can't be simplified, so we're going to copy that the same way. X minus 2 squared plus, okay, this one, we don't see a double negative there either, so we're just going to bring that down to y minus 2 squared. Now this, though, we can put into our calculator. So if we put in our calculator 4 squared, okay, 4 squared, that's going to give us the answer of 16. Okay, so that's our final step where we simplify. So that's going to be our final answer, because they want what we said is the standard of equation of a circle. So the standard of equation is going to be just like that. So that is going to be our final answer on that one. Okay, so you got a few practice problems in Delta Math, so I'd like you to try those now. All right, next, let's go ahead and get right into some more stuff. Now we're going to go to the next level. Okay, so now they're going to give you the equation in standard form, and you're going to derive the center and the radius from there. Okay, so let's start by writing the standard equation of a circle, because the more we write it, the more we're going to get it. So let's say it's going to be x minus, right, always then squared, okay, plus y minus, okay, then always then squared, equals the radius squared, right? So that's the key, is that we need to make sure that these are squared, that those are subtracting, and then that one's squared too, right? So we're just going to be substituting right in there. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so this says find the center and the radius of the circle. So we know the center is the h and the k, right? That's going to be h comma k, right? And the radius is this right over here that goes on the inside. Okay, so let's see how we would figure that out. So we're going to think of this as x minus some value, right? Plus y minus some value squared equals something squared, right? So we're asking ourselves, what's being subtracted here? Is it 8 or negative 8? What's being subtracted is 8, right? So that's going to be our center, the x value of the center. Now, over here, we have y plus 2, but it's supposed to be y minus. So what's being subtracted if it's going to be a positive 2? It has to be negative 2, right? Because we know that double negative changes to that positive, right? So that's going to be not 2, but negative 2, right? And then if this is the radius squared, right? So let's think about it over here. If the radius squared is equal to 324, right? But we don't want the radius squared, we want the actual radius. So we want r, right? So how do we get to r from there? We have to take the square root of both sides, right? So if we take the square root of this side, over here on the left side, we have to take the square root of there, right? So let's take the square root of this and the square root of that, right? So that means that's going to turn into that. And then the square root of 324, let's go ahead and put that into our calculator. Okay, so if we put that into our calculator, that's going to be equal to 18. Okay, so if the radius is 18, we're just going to put it right over there. Okay, so that's the key. They're going to give you the radius squared, right? So to get from the radius squared, which is 324, right, to the radius, we have to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to take the square root. That's how we pronounce it. Take the square root of both sides. Okay? And that's the basics of it. We're going to see whatever's subtracting from the x value, whatever's subtracting from the y value, and then take the square root of whatever they give us. All right? Let's keep it moving. Let's take a look at this one right over here. Okay, so on this one, so now on this one, let's start out with that first, the standard equation of a circle. So we're going to say it's x minus the h value squared plus y minus the k value squared equals the radius squared, right? Okay, so they want us to find the center and the radius on this. So we're asking ourselves what's being subtracted, right? X minus, that answer is 11, right? So 11 is for the x value. What is this? This is y minus. If that's a plus 14, that means it has to be subtracting a negative 14, right? So that means that's negative 14. Okay, and then if this is equal to, so if r squared is equal to 196, right? If we're trying to get to r, that means we have to take the square root of 196, right? R is going to be equal to the square root of 196. So if we put that into our calculator, that's going to give us the answer of 14. So that's where we get our answer of 14 for our radius. Okay, so that's it. We're going to find our center and we're going to find our radius. Okay, center and radius. All right, let's keep it moving. This next one right over here. Let's first start by writing down the standard equation. What it's going to be, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Okay, so now they want us to determine the equation with a radius of 9 and the center of -1 comma -4. So now they're giving us a radius and center. They want us to write it. Okay, so let's start with the basics. We know it's x minus, right? We're going to close it in squared, plus y minus, we're going to close it in squared, equals the radius, and then we're going to square it. Okay, so the key is that we're not going to make sure that those are all there as far as the squares, and then we use the subtraction. Okay, so now let's just substitute in. So we're going to say that that's going to be x minus the, remember this is x comma y, right? So that's going to be x minus -1, right? Squared plus y minus this y value of -4, right? Close it, squared, equals the radius of 9, right? And then squared. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. The first step is we're just going to set it up. The second step is we're going to simplify, right? So let's take a look at it right over here. This double negative is going to turn into a plus, right? That's going to be x plus 1, close it, squared, plus, and then this double negative, right? That's going to turn into a plus. So that's going to be y plus 4, close it, squared, equals, right? And if we put that into our calculator, 9 squared, that's going to give us 81. And that's our answer right there. That's what they're asking us to do, is just write the equation of the circle with that center and that radius. All right, now let's go into a little bit more difficult one, but it's actually quite easy. Let's start with that standard equation. It's going to be x minus h squared, right? Plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. All right, so if they want us to determine the equation and they give us the radius of that and the center of that, let's go and set it up, right? So we're going to say x minus the x value of our center, right? So it's going to be x minus -2 squared plus y minus, and that's going to be 5, right? Close it squared, so that's going to be our first step, right? Equals, now this is a little tricky. This is going to be the square root of 107 squared, right? And that's why I was telling us to use these parentheses, because I think this makes this will help you not make a mistake, right? So just you can't go wrong by using the parentheses. All right. So next, step number 2 is we're going to simplify, right? So we see that double negative there. That's going to turn into x plus 2, right? Excuse me. Close it squared plus. Here we just have a negative, right? No, so no double negative. We're just going to bring it down. Y minus 5 squared equals. Now here's the key. This right over here, the square root and the squared, they cancel each other out as far as the symbols go. So that turns into 107. Okay, if we put this into our calculator, the square root of 107 squared, that square and the square root cancels out, that's what's left. Okay, so that is our answer right over there. Okay, so that's, we haven't played around with the square roots that much, but that's it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to stop right there. We're going to skip the whole second page. All right, so just skip on that. All right, if you have any questions, just let me know. Do Delta Math and we got it.